Chapter 6, page 123 to 136 to the end of Chapter 6. My hands grow cold, and my flesh creeps, and yet the night is warm. Only the mist is cold, this mysterious mist that trails over the dead and sucks from their last creeping life. By morning they will be pale and green, and their blood congealed and black. Still, the parachute rockets shoot up and cast their pitiless light over the stony landscape, which is full of craters and frozen lights like a moon. The blood beneath my skin brings fear and restlessness into my thoughts. They become feeble and tremble. They want warmth and life. They cannot persist without solace, without illusion. They are disordered before the naked picture of despair. I hear the rattle of the mess tins and immediately feel a strong desire for warm food. It would do me good and comfort me. Painfully, I force myself to wait until I am relieved. Then I go into the dugout and find a mug of barley. It is cooked in fat and tastes good. I eat it. Slowly, I remain quiet, though the others are in a better mood, for the shelling has died down. Page 124. The days go by, and the incredible hours follow one another as a matter of course. Attacks alternate with counterattacks, and slowly the dead pile up in the field of craters between the trenches. We are able to bring in most of the wounded that do not lie too far off, but many have long to wait, and we listen to them dying. For one of them we searched 2 days in vain. He must be lying on his belly and unable to turn over. Otherwise, it is hard to understand why we cannot find him, for it is only when a man has his mouth close to the ground that it is impossible to gauge the direction of his cry. He must have been hit badly. One of those nasty wounds, neither so severe that they exhaust the body at once, and a man dreams on in a half-swoon, nor so light that a man endures the pain in the hope of becoming well again. Cat thinks he has either a broken pelvis or a shot through the spine. His chest cannot have been injured, otherwise he would not have had so much strength to cry out. And if it were any other kind of wound, it would be possible to see him moving. He grows gradually hoarser. The voice is so strangely pitched that it seems to be everywhere. Page 125. The first night, some of our fellows go out 3 times to look for him, but when they think they have located him and crawl across, the next time they hear the voice, it seems to come from somewhere else altogether. We search in vain until dawn. We scrutinize the field all day with glasses, but discover nothing. On the second day, the calls are fainter. That will be because his lips and mouth have become dry. Our company commander has promised next turn of leave with 3 days extra to anyone who finds him. This is a powerful inducement. But who we would do all that is possible without that, for his cry is terrible. Cat and Crop even go out in the afternoon, and Albert gets the lobe of his ear shot off in consequence. It is to no purpose. They come back without him. It is easy to understand what he cries. At first he called only for help. The second night he must have had some delirium. He talked with his wife and children. We often detected the name Elise. Today he merely weeps. By evening the voice dwindles to a croaking, but it persists still through the whole night. We hear it so distinctly because the wind blows toward our line. In the morning, when we suppose he must already have gone to rest, there comes across to us one last gurgling rattle. The days are hot, and the dead lie unburied. We cannot fetch them all in. If we did, we should not know what to do with them. The shells will bury them. Many have their bellies swollen up like balloons. They hiss, belch, and make movements. The gases in them make noises. The sky is blue and without clouds. In the evening it grows sultry, and the heat rises from the earth. When the wind blows toward us, it brings the smell of blood, which is very heavy and sweet. This deathly exhalation from the shell holes seems to be a mixture of chloroform and putrefaction, and fills us with nausea and retching. The nights become quiet in the hunt for copper driving bands, and the silken parachutes of the French star shell begins. Why the driving bands are so desirable, no one knows exactly. The collectors merely assert that they are valuable. Some have collected so many that they will stoop under the weight of them when we go back. But High at least gives a reason. He intends to give them to his girl to supplement her garters. At this, the Frisians explode with mirth. They slap their knees. By Jove, though, he's a wit. High, he's got brains. Chawdin especially can hardly contain himself. He takes the largest of the rings in his hand and every now and then puts his leg through it to show how much slack there is. Hi, man, she must have legs like legs. His thoughts mount somewhat higher, and a behind too she must have, like an elephant. He cannot get over it. I wish I could play hot hand with her once. My hat. Page 127. High beams, proud that his girl should receive so much appreciation. She's a nice bit, he says with self-satisfaction. The parachutes are turned to more practical uses. According to the size of the bust, three or perhaps four will make a blouse. Crop and I use them as handkerchiefs. The others send them home. If the women could see at what risk these bits of rag are often obtained, they would be horrified. Cat surprises Chawdin, endeavoring with perfect equanimity to knock the driving band off a dud. If anyone else had tried it, the whole thing would have exploded. But Chawdin always has his luck with him. One morning, 2 butterflies play in front of our trench. They are brimstone butterflies, with red spots on their yellow wings. What can they be looking for? There is not a plant nor a flower for miles. They settle on the teeth of a skull. The birds, too, are just as carefree. Page 128. They have long since accustomed themselves to the war. Every morning larks ascend from no man's land. A year ago we watched them nesting. The young ones once grew up too. We have a spell from the rats in the trench. They are in no man's land. We know what for. They grow fat. When we see one, we have a crack at it. At night we hear again the rolling behind the enemy lines. All day we have only the normal shelling, so that we are able to repair the trenches. There is always plenty of amusement. The airmen see to that. There are countless fights for us to watch every day. Battle planes don't trouble us, but the observation planes we hate like the plague. They put the artillery to us. A few minutes after they appear, shrapnel and high explosives begin to drop on us. We lose 11 men in one day that way, and 5 of them stretcher bearers. 2 are smashed so that Chawdin remarks you could scrape them off the wall of the trench with a spoon and bury them in a mess tin. Another has the lower part of his body and his legs torn off. Dead, his chest leans against the side of the trench. His face is lemon yellow. His beard still burns a cigarette. It glows until it dies out on his lips. We put the dead in a large shell hole. So far there are 3 layers, one on top of the other. Page 129. Suddenly the shelling begins to pound again. Soon we are sitting up once more with the rigid tenseness of black anticipation. Attack, counterattack, charge, repulse. These are words, but what things they signify. We have lost a good many men, mostly recruits. Reinforcements have again been sent up to our sector. They are one of the new regiments, composed almost entirely of young fellows just called up. They have hardly any training, and are sent into the field with only theoretical knowledge. They do not know what a hand grenade is. It is true. They do know what a hand grenade is. It is true. But they have very little idea of cover, and what is most important of all, have no eye for it. A fold in the ground has to be quite 18 inches high before they can see it. And although we need reinforcement, the recruits give us almost more trouble than they are worth. They are helpless in this grim fighting area. They fall like flies. Modern trench warfare demands knowledge and experience. A man must have a feeling for the contours of the ground, an ear for the sound and character of the shells. must be able to decide beforehand where they will drop, how they will burst, and how to shelter from them. The young recruits, of course, know none of these things. Page 130. They get killed simply because they hardly can tell shrapnel from high explosive. They are mown down because they are listening anxiously to the roar of the big coal boxes falling in the rear, and miss the light piping whistle of the low spreading daisy cutters. They flock together like sheep instead of scattering, and even the wounded are shot down like hares by the airmen. Their pale turnip faces, their pitiful clenched hands, the fine courage of those poor devils, the desperate charges and attacks made by the poor brave wretches, who are so terrified that they dare not cry out loudly, and with battered chests and torn bellies, arms and legs only whimper softly for their mothers, and cease as soon as one looks at them. Their sharp, downy, dead faces have the awful expressionlessness of dead children. It brings a lump into the throat to see how they go over and run and fall. A man would like to spank them, they are so stupid, and to take them by the arm and lead them away from here where they have no business to be. They wear gray coats and trousers and boots, but for most of them the uniform is far too big. It hangs on their limbs. Their shoulders are too narrow, their bodies too slight. No uniform was ever made to these childish measurements. Between 5 and 10 recruits fall to every old hand. A surprise gas attack carries off a lot of them. They have not yet learned what to do. We found one dugout full of them, with blue heads and black lips. Some of them in a shell hole took off their masks too soon. They did not know that the gas lies longest in the hollows. When they saw the others on top without masks, they pulled theirs off too, and swallowed enough to scorch their lungs. Their condition is hopeless. They choke to death with hemorrhages and suffocation. Page 131. In one part of the trench, I suddenly run into Himmelstas. We dive into the same dugout. Breathless, we are all lying beside one another, the other waiting for the charge. When we run out again, although I am very excited, I suddenly think, where's Himmelstas? Quickly, I jump back into the dugout and find him with a small scratch lying in a corner pretending to be wounded. His face looks sullen. He is in a panic. He is new to it too. But it makes me mad that the young recruits should be out there and he here. Get out, I spit. He does not stir. His lips quiver, his mustache twitches. Page 132. Out, I repeat. He draws up his legs, crouches back against the wall, and shows his teeth like a cur. I seize him by the arm and try to pull him up. He barks. This is too much for me. I grab him by the neck and shake him like a sack. His head jerks from side to side. You lump, will you get out of it? You hound, you skunk, sneak out of it, would you? His eye becomes glassy, and I knock his head against the wall. You cow, I kick him in the ribs. You swine. I push him toward the door and shove him out, head first. Another wave of our attack has just come up. A lieutenant is with them. He sees us and yells, "Forward, forward, join in, follow." And the word of command does what all my banging could not. Himmelstas hears the order, looks around him as if awakened, and follows on. I come after and watch him go over. Once more, he is the smart Himmelstas of the parade ground. He has even outstripped the lieutenant and is far ahead. Bombardment, barrage, curtain fire. Mines, gas tanks, machine guns, hand grenades, words, but they hold the horror of the world. Our faces are encrusted, our thoughts are devastated. We are weary to death. When the attack comes, we shall have to strike with many of the men with our fists to waken them and make them come with us. Our eyes are burnt, our hands are torn, our knees bleed, our elbows are raw. Page 133. How long has it been? Weeks, months, years? Only days. We see time pass in the colorless faces of the dying. We cram food into us. We run, we throw, we shoot, we kill, we lie about. We are feeble and spent, and nothing supports us but the knowledge that there are still feebler, still more spent, still more helpless, ones there who with starting eyes look upon us as gods that escaped death many times. In the few hours of rest we teach them, there, see that waggle top? There's a mortar coming. Keep down, it will go clean over. But if it comes this way, then run for it. You can run from a mortar. We sharpen their ears to the malicious, hardly audible buzz of the smaller shells that are not easily distinguishable. They must pick them out from the general din by their insect-like hums. We explain to them that these are far more dangerous than the big ones that can be heard long beforehand. We show them how to take cover from the aircraft, how to simulate a dead man when one is overrun in an attack, how to time hand grenades so that they explode half a second before hitting the ground. Page 134. We teach them to fling themselves into holes as quick as lightning before the shells with instantaneous fuses. We show them how to clean up a trench with a handful of bombs. We explain the difference between the fused length of the enemy bombs and our own. We put them wise to the sound of gas shells, show them all the tricks that can save them from death. They listen, they are docile, but when it begins again in their excitement, they do everything wrong. High Westus drags off with a great wound in his back, through which the lung pulses at every breath. I can only press his hand. It's all up, Paul, he groans, and he bites his arm because of the pain. We see men living with their skulls blown open. We see soldiers run with their 2 feet cut off. They stagger on their splintered stumps into the next shell hole. A lance corporal crawls a mile and a half on his hands, dragging his smashed knee after him. Another goes to the dressing station, and over his collapsed hands bulge his intestines. We see men without mouths, without jaws, without faces. We find one man who has held the artery of his arm in his teeth for 2 hours in order not to bleed to death. The sun goes down, night comes, the shells whine. Life is at an end. Page 135. Still this little piece of convulsed earth in which we lie is held. We have yielded no more than a few hundred yards of it as a prize to the enemy, but on every yard there lies a dead man. We have just been relieved. The wheels roll beneath us. We stand dully. And when the call, mind, wire, comes, we bend our knees. It was summer when we came up. The trees were still green. Now it is autumn, and the night is gray and wet. The lorries stop. We climb out. A confused heap, a remnant of many names. On either side stand people, dark, calling out the numbers of the brigades, the battalions, and at each call a little group separates itself off, a small handful of dirty, pallid soldiers. A dreadfully small handful, and a dreadfully small remnant. Now someone is calling the number of our company. It is, yes, the company commander. He has come through then. His arm is in a sling. We go over to him, and I recognize Cat and Albert. We stand together, lean against each other, and look at one another. And we hear the number of our company called again and again. He will call a long time. They do not hear him in the hospitals and shell holes. Once again, 2nd Company, this way. And then more softly, nobody else. 2nd Company? He is silent. And then huskily he says, is that all? He gives the order, number. The morning is gray. It was still summer when we came up, and we were 150 strong. Now we freeze. It is autumn. The leaves rustle, the voices flutter out wearily. 1, 2, 3, 4, and cease at 32. And there is a long silence before the voice asks, anyone else? And waits, and then says softly, in squads, and then breaks off and is only able to finish, 2nd Company, with difficulty. 2nd Company, march easy. A line, a short line, trudges off into the morning. 32 men.